Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sela Social Studies, and today we're talking about gold, California gold. So prior to the Mexican-American War, the land known as California was controlled by Mexico. There was a population that consisted of Mexicans, Native Americans, and Californios, which were Hispanic people who were native to California that were settled in this vast unoccupied territory. In 1839, Mexican officials gave Swiss immigrant John Sutter permission to settle a colony there, which would later become a travel rest stop for thousands of traveling immigrants every year. On January 24th, 1848, near the Sacramento River in California, James W. Marshall, a carpenter, was building a sawmill for Sutter, and when he looked in the river and saw a small golden shimmer sitting at the bottom. Gold was officially discovered at Sutter's sawmill. Sutter and Marshall agreed to become partners, and despite their best efforts to keep their find a secret, thousands of fortune seekers flocked upon Sutter's mill under the dream of riches that only the promise of gold could make them endure. Mexicans had been affected the most by the California gold rush before they had a chance to affect the gold rush themselves. Many Mexicans lost their land once Mexico lost California to the United States in their defeat of the Mexican-American War. By 1849, there were an estimated 6,000 Mexicans mining for gold. The Mexicans found that in California, a place that had been so recently been their home, they were now considered foreigners. African Americans also played a key part in the changing of the United States with opportunities they found at the California gold rush. Most African Americans came as slaves and bought their freedom with some gold. Some free African Americans used their gold to purchase and free other slaves. Gold was also used by them to fight discrimination, start newspapers, build schools, and churches. Eventually, so many African Americans were free and economically active that slavery was banned in California. The large portion of cowboys in the West were African American. By 1849, over 80,000 gold seekers made their way to California to chase the sometimes hollow dream of gold riches. The miners that settled in California became known as the 49ers. It is a simple way to remember their name and is the reason for the naming of the San Francisco 49ers American football team. These 49ers would prospect or search for gold along the banks of streams and rivers and in surface mines. The placer miner, as they were called, would use pans, and they would wash gold nuggets and flakes out of the loose rock and gravel. By 1853, over 250,000 gold seekers made their way to the streams and mines of California and produced over $60 million in gold. So how were these people going to move into these areas? Well, boom towns. Whenever enough people gathered in one place to look for gold, mining camps called boom towns sprung up. They were called boom towns because they would literally spring up overnight, not because they would explode. The miners would come from many countries and cultures and backgrounds. Most of the miners were young, unmarried men who were looking for an adventure. Around 80% of the miners came from the United States, and the remaining 20% came from around the world. Out of that 20%, only about 5% of the gold rush immigrants were women or children. Women during the gold rush made good money by doing things like cooking meals, washing clothes, and operating boarding houses. The number of miners that actually struck gold was at a minimum. It was the shop and the business owners who made the majority of the money out west. The huge amounts of gold in circulation caused a severe inflation in California, and the miners paid a high price for basic necessities. Edward Gould Buffum, author of 6 Months in the Gold Mines from 1850, described having a breakfast of bread, cheese, butter, sardines, and 2 bottles of beer with a friend and receiving a bill for $43, the equivalent today of about $1,200. There were reports of canteens charging $1 for a slice of bread and 2 if it was buttered. That's the equivalent of about $56 today. Eggs might cost you $90 at today's prices. A pickaxe would be the equivalent of $1,500. A pound of coffee, $1,200, and a pair of boots as much as $3,000, when today you can get a pair for around $120. So I discussed immigrants, and now we're going to go more into the immigrants and the lure of gold. So this lure of gold attracted miners from all over the world. I said 20% of them. In 1849 alone, about 20,000 immigrants arrived in California from China, Europe, Mexico, and South America. One of the largest immigrants group that shaped California in 1849 and still remains a major part of an immigrant group in California is the Chinese. They were welcomed all over because many Americans wanted them as laborers, carpenters, and cooks because every restaurant that opened was well patronized. Between 1849 and 1853, roughly 24,000 Chinese men came to work in the mines and opened businesses. They would usually work for old fields that Americans felt were dry and usually mined in large groups of about 50 or more to avoid racist attacks. The American legal system did not favor immigrants, so protecting their haul was much importance. Burglary was so common in these Chinese camps that they developed a technique they used to melt gold and turn them into ordinary household items like pots. They would cover the gold in soot to darken it and hide its identity, then melting at their homes later on to be able to turn it back into gold. While the gold rush was coming to an end, the Chinese left California and helped to begin a new life and to help build the Transcontinental Railroad. So what did the inclusion of all these gold miners and prospectors and immigrants do to California? Right? So we have to talk now about California statehood. Once you meet that population threshold, you can become a state. So that population explosion that resulted from the gold rush quickly made California eligible for statehood by the provisions set out by the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And in 1850, California became the 31st state. The sudden and unexpected growth of California had a negative effect on the Californios and Native Americans who had previously lived there. However, many of the gold miners who had not struck gold were forced to stay in California because of the lack of funds or the means to head back east. The new businesses and industries that were formed during the gold rush and afterwards transformed the state economically, and the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869 ended the isolation from the rest of the country, another reason why the economy would flourish in years to come. So that's California, its gold rush, the effect of immigrants, and really why California diversity is the way it is today. You can stem that straight back to the California gold rush. I'll see you next time.